Welcome back to Midnight Fright. Today I bring you two true, really creepy encounters from the Reddit r/CreepyEncounters. The first one titled, Weird Guy Shows Up at My Parents' House at 1 a.m., Looking for Me, and Using Details of My Life That Were Valid 20 Years Ago. From Reddit user LamproCapnos1324. This happened 3 nights ago, and I am going crazy trying to figure it out. I just moved into a new apartment 1 month ago, and I am still unpacking and settling in. I have been using my parents' address as my mailing address, who live a few towns over, roughly 20 minutes away. 3 nights ago my parents called me at 2 a.m. Freaked out and proceed to tell me this story. Apparently at 1 a.m. someone starts banging on their front door, and repeatedly ringing their doorbell. My stepdad walks downstairs and opens the door, leaving the front glass door closed and locked. There was a man standing outside, who looked to be in his 30s, with a black hoodie on with the hood pulled up around his face. He didn't have any distinguishing facial features, facial hair or tattoos. The only thing my stepdad said was that he looked to be Hispanic. Neither my stepdad or my mother, who was watching the whole thing out a window, recognized the man. The man says, "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for," and then proceeds to say my full name. My stepdad plays dumb and says, "Who?" The man proceeds to state my full name again, and says that my boyfriend is worried because I didn't come home that night. He claims to be a friend of my boyfriend, and tells my stepdad that they are both out looking for me, worried because I didn't show up at home. I don't have a boyfriend. I live by myself with my 3 dogs and haven't been in a relationship in the past 5 to 6 months. Here's the weird part. My stepdad asks the guy what boyfriend he was talking about, and the man tells him the name of the boyfriend I had when I was in 10th grade, nearly 20 years ago. My boyfriend in 10th grade has a very, very unique Italian name. I've never met anyone with a full name even close to his. He says my high school boyfriend's name a few more times, to ensure my stepdad heard him, and repeats that they are very worried about me, asking my stepdad if he is sure I am not inside. At this point my stepdad is weirded out, and closes and locks the door in his face. The man does not leave. He lingers in front of my parents' house for the next 10 minutes, smoking cigarettes and talking on the phone. Finally, my parents call the cops. About 5 minutes before the cops arrive, the man walks down to the dead end on their block and drives away in a silver car. My stepdad was unable to get the license plate. My parents file a police report, and nothing else happens. After I hear this story, I am going nuts over the weird details. How would someone know who I dated nearly 20 years ago, and what would the motive be of making up a story that included that weird detail about my past? I have not had contact with the 10th grade boyfriend in over a decade. Yesterday, I decide to message him on a Facebook to see if he has any insight. I tell him the whole story. He's just as confused as I am and claims to have no part in it. I am at a loss. I'm also really freaked out that some strange man is going through that much trouble at 1 a.m. to look for me. Any insights or ideas would be greatly appreciated. No, nothing else weird has happened since then. The Reddit user then updates their post saying this: "Thank you so much for all the kind words and precautions that I should take. I want to add something here that a few people commented that might shine some light on this mystery. First off, I am not in any legal trouble and have no reason to think someone would be suing me. God, I mean, I guess it's always in the realm of possibility that I'm being sued by someone, but I really don't think that's it. Like I previously commented, I had an expired registration ticket that I did not show up to court for, but I believe I got a letter in the mail just asking me to pay a really large fee, so I don't think that's related. Although I did take a personal loan out took it out about a year and a half ago. It wasn't for anything too crazy, and I was really good with making payments on time, until about 6 months ago when I had a medical issue. Currently, I am really behind on payments, but to my knowledge, I have not defaulted on the loan yet. What do you guys think? Related? I had absolutely no idea that this is a thing, or I would have included this detail to begin with. From there, we haven't heard from the Reddit user since. Let's hope the creepy guy hasn't came back. Our second true story comes from Reddit user TeaTimeAtThree, with the thread being titled, "He suddenly changed after knowing him for years." I used to work at an apartment complex. Larry was a resident that was a regular in the office. I'm using the term resident very loosely in this case, as Larry never actually had a lease at my complex. Larry effectively lived with an actual resident, a woman named Lydia, that had been living at the complex as long as I had worked there. When I had first started, it was a whole thing that no one in the office could easily communicate with her, as she spoke Portuguese. She would get frustrated and become difficult to work with when we needed to post notices, put in work orders, etc. Although the maintenance man spoke Spanish, so he could communicate with her better than us, but he wasn't always available to act as a translator. Her small grandson also lived with her. He was on the spectrum, and we regularly witnessed her struggling to handle him. I'm not exactly sure how Lydia met Larry, but suddenly he was there one day and never left. Everything changed for the better when Larry arrived. Even though he never learned Portuguese, and Lydia never learned English, they got along great and communicated fairly well through gestures. He would help her with putting in work orders, and would somehow explain paperwork to her. Every day he was out in the pool with her grandson, working on social skills with him. The grandson grew so much in that period of time. If we were doing anything at the complex, like prepping for a storm or planning a complex event, he would always help us with moving large furniture and cleaning up. If he ever witnessed anyone being mean to us in the office, he would jump to our defense. And he was always so polite and friendly. Everyone knew and loved him. The last time I saw Larry started out like any of his usual visits. He came into the office to drop off Lydia's rent, and hung around briefly to chat and catch up. He was very excited and said he had great news, and asked for a hug. Immediately that made me a bit uncomfortable. Asking for hugs was a thing a lot of creepy old men would do. But Larry had never behaved inappropriately towards me before. I chalked it up to him viewing our relationship as a friendly one, and gave him a polite hug. Larry was a big guy, and he gave me a crushing hug that lingered about a second too long. He then told me the great news. He was getting reinstated at his job. I knew Larry had previously worked as a security officer or cop, as he had mentioned it a handful of times, but he'd had a heart attack on the job, and gone on to long-term disability. Occasionally when you'd see him out swimming or walking the complex, he would mention he was working to get approved to go back to work, but there was no mistaking Larry for a man in good health or good shape, and I never anticipated he'd achieve his goal. I congratulated him on getting his job back. All smiles, he then whispered, "Can I tell you a secret?" Okay. I work for the FBI. I do undercover investigations on bad men and put them away. He pulled out his wallet and flashed a badge very quickly. I follow them around and dig up dirt on them. Then once I have enough, I jump them and arrest them. If I have to, I put them down. They even gave me my gun back. He pulled up his shirt, revealing a pistol concealed at his waist. As soon as he showed me his gun, a horrible feeling washed over me. Showing someone your concealed gun is just not something you do. And something about his demeanor was completely different from all of our previous interactions. He was weirdly giddy, almost like he was high. He rambled on a bit more about his job, and I nodded along, not saying anything so that I wouldn't accidentally prolong the conversation. Finally, Larry got up to leave, but then jerked to a stop in the doorway, and came back in. "I almost forgot my hug." I forced a laugh and jokingly said, "Oh no, you didn't. Remember you got your hug when you came in." No, I don't remember that. Give me a hug." If you've never been in a situation like this, it's hard to explain how stuck between a rock and a hard place you feel. On the one hand, you don't want to make any physical contact with this person, but there's also the fear of what will happen if you refuse them, and just wanting to defuse the situation. I gave Larry the hug, and he lingered longer this time. Then he said he'd see me tomorrow and left. After he was gone, I immediately documented the occurrence and notified my coworkers and boss. The maintenance man said Larry had also shown him the badge and gun. He said that he thought it was bullshit he was working for the FBI. Essentially, my boss's verdict was to wait and see if anything weird happened again, hoping it was just a one-time thing, and that Larry would return to his usual self. Thankfully, it was a non-issue, as he suddenly disappeared as quickly as he'd first shown up. The next time the maintenance man did work in Lydia's apartment, he asked about Larry, and she said she'd caught him stealing money out of her purse and had kicked him out. I will probably never know what happened to make Larry suddenly change like that. Maybe he was taking drugs, or had a brain tumor, or maybe he was just a predator that had finally let his nice old man mask slip, after years of successfully faking it. I don't believe I was in imminent danger that day. Larry never overtly threatened me or was nasty or mean. But the situation probably would have gotten bad if Lydia hadn't kicked him out. Now that was a creepy situation to be in. What do you think was his intentions? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoy my content, feel free to subscribe to help support the channel. It really does mean a lot.